we're in Brownwood today talking about water. You know, as someone that grew up out in this part of the state, I learned at a very early age that water is a way of life for all of us. And as your elected official, I spend a lot of my time trying to make sure that we're going to have water for the next 50 years for the people of this part of the state, not only through this part of Brownwood, in the heart of Texas, the Hill Country, and then also West Texas. I helped pass a statewide water plan in 1999 in the legislature. That plan was set up a 50-year plan where we would put together an infrastructure that would guarantee that Texas had enough water over the next 50 years. Unfortunately, for the last 14 years, that plan has gone unfunded. There's been multiple attempts to fund the plan. I'm actually the fourth chairman of Natural Resources that have tried to fund it. They all went the direction of creating a tax. The legislature rejected every one of those proposals because of different reasons, but basically they were not willing to create a water tax that in some cases the people of West Texas would have to pay that would benefit Dallas. And it was just, they were never able to fund it. Right before we started this legislative session, I called the governor, asked for a meeting with him, went in and sat down and talked to Governor Perry, and I said, I've got an idea for funding the statewide water plan. We have the rainy day fund that has, it's going to have almost $12 billion in the fund. And I said, what would you think about us taking $2 billion from that fund, sliding it over to a separate fund and use it as to loan to communities all over the state where they could build water infrastructure systems. He thought it was a very novel idea, and I proceeded to file legislation and was fortunate enough to get the members of the legislature to vote for it. In fact, it's been one of the most popular concepts I've ever worked on. It's, I think everybody realizes that unless we do a good job of coming up with a good supply of potable water for the future, we're not going to be able to exist as a state. And so I passed the water plan. We changed the structure of the Water Development Board where they'd be more proactive and go out and working on projects. But the big thing we've done is that we're trying to move $2 billion from the Rainy Day Fund over to the Water Development Fund. And there will be a vote in November, on November 5th. We're asking the voters to go to the polls and approve a constitutional amendment that would move that $2 billion. Now, what this plan is going to do, part of what I put in the legislation, of the money we're setting up, 10% of the fund has to be spent in rural Texas. As someone that grew up out here, I understand very clearly that it's a lot of times it's a lot easier for Dallas to get funding for projects because they're big. But if you get a community like Brownwood or Baines or Coleman that they may not have the credit in order to do a project, and in coming up with the money sometimes is very difficult. And so we're going to use that money as a funding. So 10% has to be used for rural sources. 20% of the money has to be used in either conservation and or water reuse in order to develop new water sources. The other 70% can be used for the more populous areas of the state, and then more especially in the building of reservoirs.